If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
This scenario, ICE is rounding up Iranian nationals with military IDs in Alabama. The FBI has increased its monitoring of Hezbollah sleeper cells embedded in American cities. 2 carrier strike groups are now in position near Iran. Intercepted communications are showing coordinated attack planning between pro-Iranian groups, not in the Middle East, right here in the homeland. Simultaneously, Border Patrol is reporting coordinated incursions along the southern border, unlike anything they've seen since the crisis years. Cellular networks in 3 major cities are showing unexplained routing disruptions. Emergency broadcast systems in 2 states issued unauthorized test activations overnight. Law enforcement in New York, Chicago, and Houston have activated joint terrorism task force protocols. This is not a drill. This is the threat environment that we are living in right now. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, Hezbollah, and Mexican cartels have forged an unholy alliance. And tonight, Khalid and I are going to rip the mask off the whole operation. Before we go any further, quick word from tonight's sponsor. On January 5th, the Department of Energy committed $2.7 billion to restore domestic uranium enrichment. It's not politics, that's national security. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium a year and produces less than 1 million. That means we're dependent on foreign suppliers for the fuel that powers our grid and supports our defense systems. Atomic Minerals trades as ATMMF in the U.S. and ATOM in Canada. The leadership team includes members behind the $654 million Rough Rider uranium sale to Rio Tinto. They control 4 100% owned uranium projects in the Colorado Plateau, one of America's most productive uranium regions. If you want to learn more, check the link in the description below. Thanks again to Atomic Minerals for sponsoring tonight's episode. Now let's talk about the real enemy. The Iranian proxy warfare network is the primary enemy system driving this crisis. The IRGC's Quds forces the command and control architecture behind every one of its terror proxies. Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iraqi militias, and is the same machine that has spent years cultivating operational relationships with Mexican cartels to move personnel, money, and weapons across the American border. This network operates by outsourcing violence to criminal surrogates, so Tehran maintains plausible deniability while still landing the punch. What they want is simple: the capacity to turn American cities into a battlefield the moment Washington threatens the regime. Sleeper cells embedded in communities from coast to coast are their insurance policy. And right now, that policy is very close to being called in. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News. It's February 24th, 2026, and I am your host, Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch. Tonight, I'm joined by my good friend Khalid Muhammad from Command 11. On this episode, we're covering the threat your government is hoping you're too distracted to see. Bottom line up front, the unholy alliance between Iran, the IRGC, Hezbollah, and Mexican cartels is not a theory. It's operational reality with sleeper cells already inside the wire and a geopolitical tripwire that could go hot any day. Why does this matter? Evil forces are threatening America and global stability from the Middle East to Mexico to your neighborhood. Most Americans have no idea how far this network has penetrated. So what we're covering is the cartel Hezbollah financial pipeline, the IRGC's homeland option for striking American cities, documented sleeper cell activity on U.S. soil, and what you can do about it. So moving into segment number 1, the cartel Hezbollah financial backbone funding the war against America. Hezbollah has been laundering up to $200 million per month through Mexican and Latin American cartel networks, with the Ayman Juma operation alone representing the most sophisticated terror financing machine ever documented in the Western Hemisphere. That money isn't just keeping Hezbollah's lights on in Lebanon. It's funding pre-operational surveillance of American infrastructure targets, stockpiling of materials, and the maintenance of sleeper networks across the United States. The cartel is not an ideological partner. They're the logistics chain, and the IRGC pays well, which means as long as the border remains porous and cartel networks remain intact inside American cities, Iran has a funded, mobile, operational presence inside the wire. So let me bring my good friend 00711, Khalid Mohammed from Command 11 in Pakistan. And Khalid, let's just dive right into this. The DEA documented Hezbollah laundering $200 million a month through cartel networks. Why hasn't this been treated as an act of war against the United States?
Well, the problem up until the Trump administration came into office was that all of these cartels were being treated as criminal organizations, and that ties the hands of what the government's able to do. When Trump declared them as foreign terror organizations, you all of a sudden opened up military power, intelligence power, political power, economic power to use against countries where these cartels operated from. That was the best decision Donald Trump could have made to stop these cartels from doing what they're doing. And we've seen the result of that. Venezuela has been pretty much crippled. Colombia has had many of their boats taken out. I think it was last week we talked about a $40 million cocaine shipment on one boat that was blown up. We talked about Mexico seizing another $41 million in cocaine that come from Colombia. When you declare and this is one of the reasons why we talk about the Muslim Brotherhood being declared a foreign terror organization. When you move them from a criminal organization to a foreign terror organization, they become a national security issue at that point. Then everything opens up. And that's what we've seen with the Trump administration since they've come to power.
Yeah, everything you said there is confirmed, like across the board, which for those of you not familiar with Khalid, grew up here in America, went to university here in America, went back to Pakistan, started a militia, does intelligence work for multiple different government agencies. Every single thing that Khalid has predicted since we've been friends has come to pass. So take his words with not with a pinch of salt, but with a dose of reality. So Khalid, now that you open that up as far as Trump designating the Mexican cartels as FTOs, what realistically changes in how the U.S. can legally respond to their Hezbollah-linked financial operations?
Well, let's take this in pieces. When you declare an organization, when you declare a cartel as a foreign terror organization, you are treating them like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, which means you can use military force against them. That was something that you couldn't use before. You could put the FBI on the ground in Venezuela, but they couldn't actually do anything. You put the CIA on the ground in Venezuela, but they would have to trust the Venezuelan police forces and intelligence forces to be able to do something against these cartels and against Hezbollah and against Hamas and against the IRGC. That's one of the reasons why the IRGC has been able to build such a strong foothold inside of Venezuela. If you go back and read the 3 articles that I wrote on the Iranian push into Venezuela and how they were able to push in, you can look at the kind of empire they built there. You had a mini proxy state just a few hundred miles away from the US that was being used to move oil, to move drugs, to move fighters from Lebanon and Syria and Palestine into Venezuela. They were being given very specific military training so they could be ready to attack inside the United States if need be. That same training was then imparted to cartels. So you were taking a criminal organization and turning them into a military organization. But up until Trump came into office, these were treated as criminal organizations. When you turn them into foreign terror organizations, you put them on the level of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. That's a different ball game. You have intelligence operations running now. You have black ops running right now. You have CIA Special Activities Division running right now. You have military strikes going on inside of against these cartels. These were things you were not able to do before. Crippling these organizations is much easier now because you've changed the way you've classified them.
Yeah, that's awesome. We absolutely need to crush them. That's for sure. So we saw the Biden installation throw the southern border wide open, which of course caused the weaponization of migration to explode. But even with it being shut down to people walking across the border, it's still a logistics corridor for terror financing. And how and why has that reality been systematically ignored by past administrations, Clete? It just blows my mind. And I don't know if you heard it, but my watch was going off just as I said that. Pisses me off.
Look at it this way. When you talk about the way these cartels operate inside the United States, they aren't taking their money and moving it through banks back into Mexico, back into Colombia, back into Venezuela. What they've done is they've bought a lot of small enterprises, tanning salons, beauty salons, little mom and pop shops, where they put their money into that store, 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 into that location, and turn their money clean so it becomes white, and they can put it into a bank and transfer it out of the country. The U.S. has tried very hard to target the money that's coming out of these organizations and into these organizations, but they've become so well organized in laundering money that it's become impossible. I mean, just look at how the Somalis were able to take $80 million out of the U.S. flying right out of Mexico. Being able to launder money through the US is very easy now because people have figured out how to do it. Invest money here, take it out 3 days later. It's cash. You may have taken a little bit of a loss in the process, but you have clean money. You can paper prove it, where the money came from, how it was earned, and the money doesn't get seized when you go out. What has happened now is that all of the money that's being pumped in to the US by these cartels is now being tracked as it enters the country, because now the US knows where it's coming from. So before, when you said, okay, criminal organization, you need to build a case. And again, yellow windbreaker, size yellow windbreaker, doesn't know how to put together a criminal case. Otherwise, he could have figured this out. When you're running money laundering through these organizations, that's the responsibility of the FBI up until the Trump administration came into office. When Trump came into office, all of a sudden it became a CIA responsibility. CIA is much better at tracking money. That's one of the jobs that the CIA is very good at. Understanding where money is coming from and how it's leaving the country, and being able to tag those transactions so they know exactly where it lands. So the next time that transaction is made, they're able to seize the transaction.
Well, let's dig a little bit deeper into the money, Khalid. So all of these sleeper cells, these Hezbollah sleeper cells that we've been tracking since the early 1990s, it's not a big secret. What does the cartel financial network provide those sleeper cells in terms of operational cover, cash flow, or anything else that they need to essentially have cash for?
Well, let's look at a statement that was made today. Today, the head of the counterterrorism unit in Mexico, the general made an announcement. One, they arrested the number 2 of the CJNG, which is going to create more unrest inside of Mexico. But he made a very interesting statement, and we posted it on our X account as well, that 80% of the weapons that are being used by the cartels are U.S. made, and 20% of the weapons that are being used by the cartels are Israeli made. And when you start thinking about that, you're going, wait a minute, where's this coming from? There's an article that we posted on our X where the media outlet that wrote the article went deep into it. They're buying weapons at gun shows in the U.S. They're buying weapons through arms dealers that are connected to Israel. They're buying weapons from the Ukraine. U.S. weapons that have been sold, that have been given to the Ukraine to fight against the Russians, are being sold back to the cartels. Then you have the Taliban, who is selling weapons to IRGC, and those weapons are coming back into the cartel's hands. There are so many different patterns and inflows for them to use. On top of that, $80 million a month is paid by the IRGC to the cartels. What do you think that money is used for? It's used to create unrest. It's used to train their people. It's used to shelter their people so they can be used at any time to attack either inside of Mexico or inside the United States.
Yeah, so I mean that raises actually a really good question, Khalid. So what would a complete shutdown of the Hezbollah cartel financial pipeline actually look like? And maybe do me a favor and dive a little bit deeper into why that has not happened yet.
Well, let's look at the U.S. based financing first. Most of your U.S. based financing for Hezbollah, Hamas, Al Qaeda, Islamic State is run through the Muslim Brotherhood, and we have gone over this over and over and over on Survival Dispatch that Muslim Brotherhood needs to be declared as a foreign terrorist organization, because they are using mosques inside the United States where people are giving what they believe to be charity money that is being funneled to terror organizations. They are giving you lists of organizations you can donate to.
Let me just throw something in here for you that's not in the brief. What's the danger of these mosques now being voting centers, precincts in Texas? Did you catch that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
maybe roll with that while you're answering the overall question. I find that very disturbing.
Well, look at it from this point of view, Chris. Every mosque in the United States is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. Either it's owned by the Muslim Brotherhood or it's controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, which means when the Muslim Brotherhood says vote for this candidate, that is who they're going to vote for. And they're going to go en masse and vote for that candidate. Now, when you look at how the migration warfare has been done with the UN agenda, where you've brought so many people into the country from hostile countries, and I'll use that word, hostile countries, that are now inside the US. People do not want voter IDs to be used. People should be allowed, according to the blue states, anyone who wants to vote should be allowed to vote, whether they have the right to vote or not. That means you have just enabled every single immigrant and asylum seeker inside the United States that is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, that is going to a Muslim Brotherhood mosque, that is pumping money into terrorist organizations to control your political voting process. And I'll give you a really simple example. When you look at Texas itself, Greg Abbott has been an absolute failure as a governor. You have allowed a community to be created that is owned and operated by the Muslim Brotherhood. How is it possible that the governor of the state of Texas did not understand the threat that the Muslim Brotherhood poses to the state of Texas and the citizens of the state of Texas?
Yeah, so Father Duck wanted to make a good point here, and it does get abused. He said, there are no loopholes at any gun show. All sales must require filling out all the 4473s, blah, blah, blah. And he's right. That's an overblown thing. It doesn't mean that the cartels aren't buying weapons there, but you still have to go through the processes at the gun shows. It's not the loophole that the gun grabbers want everybody to believe. So with that being said, Khalid, let's pivot into segment number 2, the IRGC's homeland option and how Iran plans to strike American cities. So the IRGC has directly threatened to activate sleeper cells inside the United States if Washington strikes Iran. And U.S. authorities have disrupted at least 17 Iranian-backed plots on American soil in the past 5 years alone. Iran's operational model for a homeland strike is distributed and simultaneous, designed to overwhelm law enforcement response capacity by hitting multiple soft targets across many cities at the same time, which is precisely the 9/11 2.0 scenario that counterterrorism analysts like Khalid have been gaming out for years now. The shift from Iranian nationals carrying out operations to criminal proxies and activated sleeper assets means the threat has become almost impossible to detect through traditional signals intelligence. These are people already embedded in communities, holding regular jobs, waiting for the order, or they've been hiding out in somebody's basement since they crossed the border while their handlers look after everything for them. So we don't have any eyes on these people whatsoever. So, Khalid, Iran has explicitly threatened to activate sleeper cells on American soil if we attack them.
Yep.
At what point does that constitute an act of war requiring a response and not a monitoring operation? Meaning that, what if we don't attack them, which I think would be stupid, but if we don't attack them and they activate sleeper cells, seems to me that's an act of war, no?
It is an act of war. This is the catch-22 where Iran is caught. They have established their own network, and we need to understand this very clearly. What the IRGC is doing is different than what Al Qaeda is doing. It's different than what the Islamic State is doing inside the United States. These three parties are not working together. They are working independent. Al Qaeda is after aviation. The ISKP, Islamic State Khorasan province, which is part of Afghanistan and Pakistan, is getting ready to run ground assaults inside of the U.S. And then you have IRGC that's turned around in November of last year. We announced this live on the air that the IRGC has linked up with TDA, which is the most violent, brutal cartel that has emerged out of Venezuela. And using Antifa, they're going to create unrest and then use TDA to push in violence and then push in their attacks from behind that. The problem that we're looking at right now is that you don't know who you're looking for, because these people are U.S. citizens. They are living and working in the U.S. They are spread across the United States. And if you put up that map that I sent you, Chris, from 2015 of how embedded they...
Oop. Sorry, Clede, you dropped off there. There's your map that you're requesting.
Now, if you look at this map, Chris, if you look at the circles, those are DEA offices that are controlled by Mexican cartels. DEA offices.
Hold on. Say that again. Say that again, Khalid.
The little circles that you see are all DEA offices, Drug Enforcement Agency offices, where the cartels have more control than the federal government does.
Okay, that's new information to me, and that's pretty very disturbing information. Maybe roll with that a little bit further, Cleve.
Now, when we understand how the cartels operate, it's extortion, kidnapping, and ransom, right? So what they've done is they've kidnapped family members, they've used extortion, they've used blackmail, they've bribed a number of DA officials inside those offices. So they have first-hand information before a raid happens, before any kind of action happens against them, so they can move their products from one place to another. They can move their weapons from one place to another. If they know that there's going to be a raid on a human trafficking operation, for example, they will hold up the human traffic operation so that the DA isn't able to catch them. Now, moving on from that, if you look at the color that is extended across the map in the U.S., that's the extent of control that the cartels have inside the U.S. That means that, let's see, North Dakota, South Dakota, parts of Idaho, parts of Montana, parts of Nevada are clear of the cartels right now. The rest of the U.S. has cartels. The rest of the U.S. is under cartel control. Now flip that over and think of that from the IRGC's point of view. They have this much space to operate inside the United States. They have this many active operatives in their network inside the U.S. that they can use leverage to carry out complex, coordinated terror attacks across from the Midwest all the way to the East Coast.
I mean, they essentially have an army, right? This is the other graphic that you sent, which
this is 2025. This is 2025.
This is very disturbing. Go ahead and talk about this, because this essentially shows you, in my opinion, the distribution of an additional, I don't know what you want to call it, part of the Iranian army that's behind the wire here in America.
Yeah. And this is what Iran has been, and this is something a lot of people don't understand. And if you go to our Proton drive that we've shared inside the Element channels, there's a set of videos on Qasem Soleimani, on the way he thought and the way he built the asymmetric warfare model for Iran. Iran is a very small country. They are not able to carry out the kind of warfare that you would expect from a large country. So they have to concentrate more on the guerrilla warfare side. So what did Soleimani do? He linked up with the cartels. He started pumping money into them. He started building relationships with them. He started creating training opportunities for them. And as that relationship built, he moved Hezbollah from Lebanon into Venezuela and said, now you sit here, you sit in Mexico, and you coordinate with the cartels. You become part of them. You speak their language. You act like they do. You dress like they do. You help them in any way they need help. And what that has done is create a secondary army that operates inside the United States. And the size of these cartels, the brutality these cartels will go to, is on the level, if not crossing, what the jihadis will do.
So actually, maybe speak a little bit, Khalid, to how opportunistic the cartels and their gangs are. Trenda Aragua is kind of like the poster child of this stuff, where they will work for anybody who wants to pay them. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter what difference there is in ideologies. You pay them and they will do whatever nasty stuff you want them to do. I don't know that a lot of people realize just how mercenary these gangs and cartels are in that regard. They don't have to be buddies with somebody to take their money and do their dirty work.
No, the cartels have always been this way. If you look at the way the cartels operate, you look at the way the Crips and the Bloods operate as well. They are not ideologically based. If you're paying them, they'll do what you want them to do. So you've got layers of warfare inside the United States. If you're talking about TDA, and TDA was created in the prisons in Venezuela, and Maduro was so loved by TDA because he released them from prison.
Well, I mean, maybe dive a little bit deeper into this. So we know that the IRGC to some extent has shifted from using Iranian operatives. I'm not saying they're not still leveraging them, but as you've mentioned, they've focused on these, let's call them proxy gangs, proxy cartels. And what does that do as far as our ability for law enforcement, whether it's the FBI or something that's not at the national or federal level? What does that do to law enforcement's ability to detect and disrupt, these terror plots? I think it looks like just a ball of spaghetti to myself.
No, there's no way. There's no way that you can stop these plots now. Because not only before you were watching just jihadis, now your problem is that you have jihadis that are in coordination with cartels, and cartels are already in those places where the jihadis want to strike to begin with. So they're doing the legwork for them. They're doing the fundraising for them. They're creating opportunities where violence can start, and it's a phrase we use quite often. Chaos and mayhem. That's what the cartels are able to create very quickly. And we've seen it in Mexico with the arrest of one leader, the killing of one leader. We saw Mexico literally set on fire. And today, the arrest of the second one and the arrest of the son of the top kingpin is going to set Mexico onto a different level of violence. And they're getting closer and closer to the U.S. border. So everything you've been seeing happening in the Middle East is now literally right on your border and is ready to cross. Once it crosses, all of those fighters are sitting and waiting.
Well, Khalid, let's talk about how CCTA's complex coordinated terror attacks across multiple cities are essentially designed to overwhelm first responders. I have spoken to first responders across the country. Many of them have been in their roles for, 20, 30 years. Every single one of them has told me that immediately after 9/11 1.0, they had SOPs implemented. They practiced the SOPs. They were prepared for terrorist attacks. But we've gone all this time now, 25 years since 9/11 1.0, and they're all now telling me the same thing, that none of that exists anymore. Nobody's practicing the SOPs. Nobody's refining the SOPs. Nobody's even paying attention to those SOPs. Newer hires that were hired when, the entry level was dropped because of the 2020 defund the police bullshit. It does not look good on a local basis. And I don't know that it looks good on a federal basis. For the longest time, your intel said 10 to 15 cities. Now you're talking 25 plus cities. I would argue that it doesn't matter if it's local law enforcement or the feds. We do not have the bases covered. And maybe just expand on that a little bit as to how dire that actually is.
Well, I'll give you a conversation I had in the last couple of days with some members of the military and spec ops from the U.S. Because of what was going on in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the fight that's going on between us and the Taliban, they were asking, what is the potential blowback in the U.S. because of that? And I said, look, we've been talking about complex coordinated terror attacks inside the U.S. And a couple of guys started laughing, saying that can never happen. I said, really? It can never happen? Have you looked at Mexico? Have you looked at Spain? Have you looked at India? Have you looked at France? These are all countries that believed it could not happen. And then what I did is I took one very specific location where you and I have had this conversation. I'm not going to say it publicly, what location that I covered with them. I literally took the location, drew the picture out on a piece of paper and said, these are your weak points. This is where they're going to hit you from. This is how they're going to neutralize your defenses, and they will have complete control. Once they have complete control, it is game over for you. It was pin drop silence, Chris. Pin drop silence. And I literally thought, I had the hairs on the back of my neck stood up because I thought somebody was going to pull out a black bag, put it over my head, and disappear me right there. Because they couldn't figure out how I knew. Sitting in Pakistan, they said, how do you know this is possible? I said, I've seen the map. I've heard the model. I know exactly how it's going to be carried out. You guys are asleep at the wheel and you think it's not going to happen. And they're going to take advantage of that fact that you don't think this can happen again. And that complacency, and over the past 5 months, we've said this over and over, the complacency in the federal government, the complacency in law enforcement, the statement that this is clickbait has done more damage to the national security of the United States than anything the terrorists could have done through psychological warfare or anything else. Because when the U.S. itself believes this cannot happen, you've already won half of the battle.
Yeah, so for the record, Khalid, you are not suicidal and you have no desire to shoot yourself 3 times in the back of the head, correct?
Nope. And I'm a very good swimmer. So
I want to thank Christopher for the $5 tip. Thank you very much. I want to just bring up a note here from our friend Father Duck, if I can find it, and all the stuff that's gone flying by here. So Father Duck says, actually right here in Orange County, I have a massive fire and police sheriff 6-day training exercise going on as of yesterday, getting ready for something major. And, there's always outliers. And this is an outlier situation. I can tell you, I'm on the phone from the beginning of the day to the end of the day with people across the country. I'm in meetings with people across the country. This is the exception to the rule. I honestly think we're probably doing better in Florida than any other state, to be quite frank. But even then, we still have many jurisdictions here in Florida that have their thumb up their ass, just like, many other parts of the country. So I'll leave that at that. And let's move on to the next question here. Cleve, do you want this graphic still up or do you want to switch to the next graphic?
We can take that one down.
Okay. Got the stages are all messed up here because of the way we bounced around. Okay, we're fixed up. All right, so moving to the next part, Cleve. ICE arrested 670 Iranian nationals amongst all these sleeper cells in 2025. I know this is going to be a brutal number, but what's the realistic estimate of how many were not caught, and where are they?
Well, let's break this down a little bit. You've got more than, I'd say, 50,000 Iranians that are in the country that are radicalized, that are true believers in the IRGC, that are true believers in the mullah regime that exists in Iran. Um, add to that the Somalis that are funding Al Shabaab back in Somalia, that are fully radicalized. Add to that the Afghanis that you have believed they were going to be on board with the American agenda, but once they got to the US, they supported the Taliban. And there's a general that was part of the Afghan National Army who, the other day when we bombed the terror camps, literally came on Twitter and was saying, you know, fuck Pakistan for bombing the Taliban terror camps. And this is a guy who was part of the Afghan National Army, trained by the US, was patriated to the US, has is working as a defense contractor with the Department of War, and this is his mentality. You have so many levels of radicalization outside of the Iranis that no one actually understands how deep this problem is, and the FBI is has everybody on their radar, but is not arresting anyone until they carry out a terror attack. And the problem is that you are having, take for example the guy that drove across the country to push his car through a power generation plant. Why would you drive across the country? How did you not know about this guy? And then the FBI turns and goes, "Oh yeah, we knew about him. We knew he was radicalized, but we didn't know he was this radicalized."
Man, if we all had $1 for every time the FBI said, well, he was on our radar, we'd all be retired and living in multi-million-dollar mansions. Cleet, I think I got the question of the night for you here that everybody's dying to hear the answer on. So the IRGC is in somewhat of a degraded strike after our last hits on them. Israeli strikes in the interim. Now you've got Afghanistan that y'all in Pakistan spanked over the weekend with multiple hits. The question I'm telling you that's on everybody's mind, Khalid, what does that do to the timeline of the Homeland strike here that we've been referring to as 9/11 2.0?
Well, let's start from the beginning. Because the plan was that Afghanistan was going to be the center point, the command and control center for the 9/11 attacks. As long as Afghanistan is in trouble, as long as they're being hit by Pakistan, they don't have the ability to run a command and control. I'll give you an example. Over the weekend, when we were bombing Afghanistan, Habitullah Akhundzada, who is the leader of the Taliban, went into a bunker and hid. Sirajuddin Haqqani went into another bunker and hid. Mullah Umar, who is the defense minister, went into another bunker and hid. They got together for a meeting on Monday, and they were all bitching at each other. They were all bitching at each other and saying, it's your fault, it's your fault. The amount of discord we've been able to create inside the Taliban has created a problem for them. It's also created a level of distrust amongst the other terror groups that are operating inside of Afghanistan. So that trust level is not there anymore. Now let's roll over into Iran. Iran has invested a lot of money into the Taliban. The Faryab province, Herat province, which are literally right on the border with Iran, have been used for Hamas and Hezbollah training camps. Habitullah Akhundzada, the leader of the Taliban, is on the Irani payroll. He gets money from Iran every month. Iran was of the point of view of, if shit goes bad in Iran, we'll cross the border into Afghanistan and we'll run command and control from there. Now, the problem for Iran has become, as long as Pakistan is bombing Afghanistan, we were shelling Afghanistan again today. Today, again, we were shelling Afghanistan, cross-border firing by our artillery teams. As long as Iran is unable to cross into Afghanistan, 9/11 2.0 goes into a questionable state because you don't have the stability to be able to run it. The third piece, the piece that a lot of people haven't started talking about yet, is 2 days ago, the Islamic State Central, the core Islamic State entity, issued a very long statement where they literally called Jolani a traitor, and they have started absolute war against Jolani's government. Giuliani is so confused right now that he's about to change maybe 50 to 60% of his military, 50 to 60% of his ministers, because he's not sure how many are on his side and how many are on the Islamic State core, the central Islamic State. Now, a piece of information a lot of people don't know. Back in 2013, the Qataris backed Giuliani to remove Baghdadi from power in ISIS. There is a deep relationship, a deep hatred between both these groups. That's when Giuliani moved to Al Qaeda, because when the overthrow of Baghdadi failed, he needed a place to go, and Al Qaeda was the only place he could find safe haven. And that's why he founded the Al Nusra Front. That's why he went and became the co-founder of Al Qaeda in Syria. The three states that could have been used to be command and control centers for 9/11 2.0 are now in a major state of flux. That means that 9/11 2.0 is either going to be delayed or canceled, because now they don't have that stability for a command and control.
Well, let's put some numbers to this, Khalid. I was just looking at some stuff myself. So let's say we had 25 cities, and in each of those cities there was only 10 sleeper cells, and those sleeper cells had somewhere between 4 and 8 jihadis. Fairly low numbers based on
10 jihadis. It was 10 jihadis per cell.
That's what I'm saying. I'm going on the very low end here for a very specific reason. So that works out to 250 cells attacking us simultaneously, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 jihadis participating. What does the ratio look like for the command and control center? Let me just put it this way. So every person in the American military who carries a gun into battle, depending on what branch they're in and what their role is, there's somewhere between 10 and 12 support personnel to ensure everything else works, right? We are the very best in the world at getting food and water to the front line, and you can't fight if you're hungry. And it's one of the reasons that we beat up on people, because we're extremely good at that stuff. Is the number somewhat similar or less, more? I'm just wondering, if we had 1,000 to 2,000 jihadis, how many people in the command and control centers?
Well, let's take a very simple ratio. For every single jihadi in a sleeper cell, there are 4 people coordinate everything for him, whether it be food, clothing, cell phone, burner phone, communication back and forth to his home country, to his family. That is all done by 3 or 4 people for every single member of the cell.
Okay.
Then you have commanders on top that have 5 to 6 people taking care of them. So when you start working the numbers, when Joe Kent said to the Senate there are 18,000 jihadis in the U.S., you and I both said on a live broadcast that the number is low. The number he's reporting is low, because our belief is right now inside the United States there are well over 40,000 jihadis that are trained, military-age males ready to attack the U.S. When you take a 40,000 number and start breaking that out across U.S. cities, that turns into not just not just your primary attacks, but secondary and tertiary attacks become very easy because of that the number base that you have. And I'll give you an example on top of that. Just yesterday, the Russian Foreign Ministry issued a report saying that inside of Afghanistan right now, there are 23,000 jihadis.
Let me try to get to this number here, Khalid. So, and again, we're going on the low end, and I'm talking for the first part, boots on the ground here, but then I want to tie it back to the size of the workforce overseas in command and control. So let's just call it 250 cells, representing 1,000 to 2,000 jihadis, representing 4,000 to 8,000 support staff.
Yep.
How many people are sitting in command and control centers in Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan? I don't know if there's anywhere else they might be sitting, but those seem to be the 3 areas where they concentrate.
Your 4 command and control centers: Iran, Syria, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. and
Okay.
your core command and control center is Afghanistan. So when you start talking about how many people are sitting in command and control centers, you have got at least 5 commanders sitting in every command and control center in each of those countries.
Okay.
There are 4 levels. So if one command and control center is taken out, there's a second command and control center that immediately takes over. There are 4
Okay.
levels of those.
Okay.
So when you talk about 5 commanders with 20 people support staff for each commander, counting security, counting food, counting external communication, you're talking what, 20 times 5, that's 100 people for every for every group, times 4, that's 400, times 4 countries.
So about 1,600 ish.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, you could call it 1,600 to 3,200 based on, there's this variable that we've got here. So I'm just trying to add this whole thing up. So at the very least, you'd be looking at about 6,600 people actively participating in the attacks, 6,600 to all the way to double that. So 13,200 on the high end.
Yeah.
That's a pretty significant force when you're considering the guerrilla warfare tactics, for lack of a better term, that they're engaged in. I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the stuff that happened in Vietnam, and I can't think of any of the guerrilla, attacks that we had there that had anywhere near this number of people involved.
Well, remember, Vietnam is a different technology based on what we're looking at right now. What your command and control teams that are sitting abroad are doing is they're watching broadcast news, they're watching social media, they're watching what people are saying in their conversations on WhatsApp and in other groups. So you have different people monitoring different channels, trying to figure out what's being said and where opportunities are presenting themselves. If we look at Mumbai, for an example, Mumbai, you had commanders literally watching broadcast news and social media and telling people, don't go to the right, go to the left. The police have blocked off that road, go the other way instead. So that's what your command and control teams that are sitting abroad are doing. They are watching what's being broadcast. And this is the problem. When the attack starts, mainstream media is going to carry this live. And when they carry this live, you have given them a beautiful level of intelligence where they can see exactly what's going on, where it's going on, how it's going on, how many people have responded, where they've grouped at. So when you know where they've grouped at, you send 1 or 2 suicide bombers in and you've taken out the entire police force.
So I'm just going through some of these numbers here, Khalid. I had a question, but it doesn't fit in at this point, so I'm going to leave it for a minute, and I'm going to take us into segment number 3 because I think the question belongs better there. So let's get into segment number 3, which is documented Hezbollah sleeper cell activity inside the United States. Convicted Hezbollah operative Ali Karani openly told FBI agents he was a sleeper agent for Unit 910. Let's clarify that Hezbollah in the Middle East is directly funded by the IRGC. Hezbollah outside of the Middle East is tasked with funding its own operations. It is referred to as Unit 910. Doesn't mean that there's one unit of guys for the whole world in the context that you're thinking. It just, that's what they refer to the branches of Hezbollah that have to raise money on their own, which is why they cozied up to the terrorists or the cartels, pardon me, in the early 1990s. So this guy said he was conducting surveillance on FBI offices, Secret Service facilities, an armory in New York City, and he was just the one that they caught. And then you got another Hezbollah operative in Texas purchased 300 rounds of ammonium nitrate, which is an explosive precursor, not to set off a bomb immediately, but to stockpile it for when the signal comes, which means right now their materials and personnel pre-positioned across the country, of course, waiting for activation. No new news there. The intelligence community's own threat assessments confirm that Iran views these networks as an insurance policy to be flipped on the moment contact escalates, which means every step Washington takes towards military action against Iran brings the activation clock one click closer to zero, with the curveball in the mix, the hair in the ointment being are the command and control centers capable to function or not. So let me hit you with this question here on Karani. So he walked into an FBI office voluntarily, told them he was a Hezbollah sleeper, and they still had to work to build the case. One, what does that tell us about how well these operatives are trained to blend in? And two, is this like some sort of, I don't know what you would call it, like a bullshit play to try and get the FBI to look somewhere else? I mean, it strikes me as very rare for a jihadi to walk into an FBI office and say, "Hey, how you doing? I'm a terrorist."
The only reason a jihadi would walk into a law enforcement agency and say he's a jihadi is if his life is threatened. He's under threat from his own organization. Hezbollah itself was going to kill him. So that's the only reason that they would walk in. The second thing, and this is something the IRGC is very good at, they will send someone in to give false intelligence to law enforcement, to intelligence agencies, to misdirect you from what they're actually doing. So IRGC plays multiple games, again, because Iran is a small country and they don't have the capabilities to fight a war on the level of a major country. They rely more on asymmetric warfare. And asymmetric warfare, when you look at the way Qasem Soleimani set up the asymmetric warfare model for Iran, it is probably one of the best models we have ever seen. He has been able to discreetly fund, he has been able to discreetly train, he has been able to discreetly move people from one place to another. In that process, he's also laid in the useful idiot, that when they decide that, okay, we need to misdirect somebody, walk him into the FBI, walk him into the CIA and say, listen, I'm Hezbollah and I want to tell you what we're doing in the US. And he's going to point out places that there are no Hezbollah activities, but they'll draw your attention that way. The problem with the FBI, and this is my main problem, is the problem with the FBI is that the FBI is not an investigative agency anymore. Back in the days when you would take retired police, when you would take active police officers and give them jobs inside of the FBI, that was when the FBI could actually investigate crimes. Now you have a bunch of CPAs, a bunch of fresh graduates that have no idea how investigations are run. So even if a person like me were to walk into the FBI and say, listen, I have credible intelligence, and this is what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to happen, I would probably end up in a jail before the terrorists would end up in jail, because the question would be, how do you know so much and we don't know anything about it?
Yeah. Well, maybe because you're paying attention. Just further to that point, somewhere around maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Keith Graves said to me that he despised conducting workshops for the FBI because sure as shit, every time he did it, one of these DEI hires would run to their superior and say, he said something that wasn't politically correct. And it would cause a bunch of consternation, unnecessary consternation. He confirmed everything you're saying, that the FBI is comprised of people primarily now that have BAs and bullshit degrees and bullshit topics, have zero hands-on policing experience, all theoretical, no practical. And when you think about that, it's no wonder that they've been focused on things like DEI, ideologies, and they don't have the chops to do this stuff, in my opinion. So speaking of that, here's a great example. How does a Hezbollah operative, Khalid, buying 300 pounds of ammonium nitrate in Texas, how does that not trigger like an immediate national response other than, oh, we have a couple FBI agents looking into it? I mean, how many pounds of ammonium nitrate did Timothy McVeigh use in Oklahoma? I don't know if you know. If not, I'll look it up. But 300
was 80.
Like a lot.
I think it was 80 pounds he used. I think it was 80 pounds that he used in Oklahoma. But look, again, the problem is everybody's on everyone on the FBI's radar, but nobody's doing anything about it. And this has been the failure of Kash Patel. Kash, when he was not FBI director, when he thought he was going to be appointed as director of the CIA, he was very blatantly open about the things that he was going to do. When Kash Patel did not become the director of the CIA, did not become national security advisor, and did not become the director of national intelligence, he got pissed off and went, "Wait a minute, I'm not going to play nice with everybody. I want control. I want intelligence. I want this done." And the proof of that is that during a meeting with the entire cabinet, Kash Patel literally went at Joe Kent and at Tulsi Gabbard and said, the job of counterintelligence inside the United States should be the FBI's responsibility. When you are allowing people, you have the Halloween plot that the FBI rolled up. You had the people in New York and New Jersey that the FBI rolled up. You have the Los Angeles plot the FBI rolled up, but nothing happened. You were not able to connect it to foreign countries, take out the leaders that were coordinating the attacks in foreign countries, because you don't know how to investigate. You got the big score, you got the arrest, you got the headline, but you didn't do the homework to put it all together and put the attack in place. Now, coming back to your question, how many pounds of ammonium nitrate do you need to buy? 300 pounds is a lot. I mean, how do you justify buying 300 pounds of ammonium nitrate? And that didn't trigger anything for the FBI.
Yeah, so just for sake of relativity, McVeigh used somewhere around 4,800, 5,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate saturated in fuel. So about 16, 17 times more ammonium nitrate than the 300 pounds this Hezbollah just got caught with. But then goes on to say it might be significantly more as far as what Timothy McVeigh used, but 300 pounds is not trivial. And, you know, there's lots of explosive incidents that have used 300 or even less that have been pretty devastating. So it's definitely, it should have got more attention than what it did, in my opinion.
Well, but Chris, if you remember back early in 2025, the Palm Springs attack, there was a guy in, I think it was in Washington, who had bought somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, I want to say 10 tons of fertilizer, and had somehow been able to ship that to California and didn't raise any alarm bells. They were building bombs and no one said anything about it. And then the attack was carried out in Palm Springs and everyone went, wait a minute, how did that happen? And you and I both went over and over this going, look, the attack wasn't on the fertility center. Literally a minute away, there was a tier 1 medical center. That was the target. But it was a test run to see if they were able to do it or not. And they got as close as they needed to do. They got as close as they needed to be able to test it. And they carried out the attack and they went, yep, we can do it.
Do you remember when there was a big load of ammonium nitrate that disappeared from a train heist a few years ago?
Something like 20 tons, 30 tons?
30 tons, 60,000 pounds that's out there somewhere in the wild that nobody can account for.
Yeah.
I mean,
and where's the investigation?
Honestly, I haven't seen anything on it in forever. So let's just round off Timothy McVeigh's and call it 5,000 pounds. You're talking 12 times that much has just disappeared. Nobody knows where. And that, how does a rail car, by the way, disappear?
Yeah, that was my question.
It's only a few years ago, too. It's 2023. The loss was discovered in May of 2023. Well, hold on. The rail car left Wyoming April 2023. The loss was discovered in May of 2023. It was publicly reported in June of 2023. I mean, how does something like that happen and then just completely fall off the radar? It's a rhetorical question. I don't expect you to have the answer to that. But I do have another question in this segment, and that is, let's say we hit Iran this week.
Yeah.
Is some of that, on Trump's part, let's say, calling their bluff on what they have as far as people behind the wire here that can do damage to us? Seems to me that it's you decide what you want, and then you decide what you're willing to give up to get it. I'm not saying we shouldn't take Iran out, but I already have an SDN's alert message written for when we attack Iran to put a warning out to basically say you should be in condition orange because it's highly likely we'll see retaliation. Kind of weave through this a little bit, Khalid. Let's say that there's been significant damage done by y'all in Pakistan, and we do significant damage in Iran as far as command and control centers are concerned, and Iran still activates sleeper cells here as retaliation. What's the difference in attacks look like if you go all the way from one extreme to the other? So in other words, we know what they look like when you've got a full command and control set ordering everybody to do the things. What happens when you take that out of play, but you still have all the boots on the ground here in America? What does that look like?
Well, if you remember the other night when I was on the program, I was talking about how IRGC has now moved into Lebanon and taken over complete control of Hezbollah. That's a very interesting point that people need to keep in front of them when they're talking about the attack on Iran. What IRGC is doing right now is they're moving their key commanders into locations where if Iran is hit, whether it be a limited strike like Trump is talking about, which would be an absolute fuck up if he goes with a limited strike, it needs to be either an all-out attack or nothing at all. Because Iran has already said, even if we're hit with one bomb, we will declare all-out war. We will destroy everything we possibly can, which means all the sleeper cells, all the command and control centers, every target in the Middle East will be hit. So Donald Trump needs to be thinking about this first, that if you're going to hit Iran, you need to hit Iran so hard that they cannot get up. They cannot get up, because if they're able to get back up again, they are going to retaliate. And their retaliation is going to be global. And if you look at the statements that the Irani administration, the Irani regime has made over the past week, they have repeatedly said that if you hit Iran, it will not be regional, it will be global. It will not be one country that gets attacked because of an attack on Iran. We will hit you everywhere. That means that they have prepped themselves already. They've moved their assets into place that once Iran is hit, they are ready to go. Now, if, for example, and I'll give you my, if I was president of the United States, I would tell Israel that you hit Lebanon as hard as you can, hit Hezbollah camps as hard as you possibly can, take them out. With my own military, I would bomb the shit out of Iran. At the same time, I would hit Syria. At the same time, I would hit Afghanistan as well. Take out the threats across the Middle East that can be used against you back home in the US. When you've done that, at the same time, move your military, because this is where my problem is right now. 40% of US military power is sitting in Europe and in the Middle East right now to attack Iran. That means 40 to 50% of US military power is not in the homeland to protect if the homeland is attacked by sleeper cells or jihadis. That is a huge fact to keep in mind. And this is something I think why Donald Trump is hesitating so much, because when you look at the potential of what Iran can do with their asymmetric warfare, their response could be brutal on the other side of the world. Whereas you may wipe out Iran, you may wipe out the IRGC, you may wipe out the Mullah regime, you will still get hit very hard back home. And the reason for that is so much of your military power is sitting outside the US right now, which means your response time, your reaction, your ability to coordinate a counter force is very limited.
Well, let me throw out a scenario for you, Khalid, that occurred to me not too long ago. So we've got tons of intelligence that Hezbollah and other jihadi groups have surveilled things like subway systems, bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge is really high on their list, nuclear facilities, law enforcement infrastructure, including the FBI headquarters. I would say that they've put eyes on most of our large and significant infrastructure. how plausible would it be? And again, I'm just asking you to speculate, but how plausible would it be that if the command and control teams are so diminished in Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan to coordinate a full blown 9/11 2.0, what's the prospect of them saying to their sleeper cells, go take out the Golden Gate Bridge, go take out all the bridges in New York City? So much less complex, but would be absolutely devastating, not just from a loss of life perspective, but economically as well. Is that
Well, look at it from this point of view, Chris. I'll put out a scenario that matches. Look at it from this point of view. You've taken out all the command and control centers, but you still have commanders that are sitting inside the United States, inside of Europe, that are able to run those sleeper cells. Let's say that they go, okay, wait a minute. If, for example, in this past week, they've sat down with their commanders and said, listen, if Iran is attacked and we are unable to communicate with you, these are your primary targets. That means the White House,
okay?
Congress, the FBI building, the Golden Gate Bridge, bridges and tunnels in New York, Florida, Southern Command, Fort Bragg. The U.S. will get hit very hard. And it will be a response that will be coordinated from the point of view of, well, we took the hit from you, but we returned twice as much as we could as you planned to do to us. Yes, you hit us. Yes, you took out some targets in our country, but we crippled you.
Yeah. So you just, again, a ray of sunshine, Khalid, with all this good news. Like I said, it was just a thought that occurred to me recently that if they couldn't do the complex coordinated stuff, that they would pivot to another vector. So let's talk boots on the ground here on our side of the equation. So community leaders like pastors, local officials, what are the concrete behavioral and physical indicators that you should be watching for, those people should be watching for in their own backyard? And that includes more than just leaders, but leaders are supposed to lead by definition. You've touched on this in the past, but give us a refresher on concrete behavioral and physical indicators that we need to be paying attention to.
Well, first thing you need to pay attention to is the way groups are operating. You'll the sleeper cells are not going to be seen during the day moving around. They'll be moving at night. They'll be moving inside of forests, inside of dark areas. Again, these are people that are not trained to work in the shadows. When they come out in public, they will behave exactly like an American would. They will drink, they will date, they will eat pork. They will do everything that an American would do, so no, they don't raise any alarm bells. The thing you need to pay attention to, and what we've been watching over the past 2 weeks, is you've seen people disappear. You've seen terror attacks stop across the world. Terror attacks have stopped. Other than today, with the suicide bomber in Russia that blew himself up in Moscow and killed 2 police officers, we have not seen a terror attack across the planet anywhere. And we said this before, that things would go just dead quiet. There would be nothing happening anywhere. And that's what we've seen. Things have gone dead quiet. That's why we're concerned right now, because people that are part of the support cell have disappeared. People that have been running around in manual labor jobs have disappeared. The people that are considered the ones that are going to carry the water for the attackers have all disappeared. That was the first trigger point that we looked at. The second thing you need to look at is any college campus, and this is something I've hammered over and over. Any university town, any city where you can easily blend in, and these are the blue states, the sanctuary cities, where these people can blend in very easily, and they are an hour to an hour and a half away from their primary target, and it's just a quick drive to get there. So there's a lot of things that people need to pay attention to. Anyone who comes around asking about security protocols or testing security protocols, trying to open doors that they shouldn't be opening, trying to go through into areas where they shouldn't be going through, Those are people that are continuing to probe to see if things have changed. Thus far, we have not seen any SOPs change across the US, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be federal government. We have yet to see anything change on ground. And the terrorists are watching that as well. They will continue to probe up until the point that they go green light, go. And when it goes green light, go, it's game on. Then there's no stopping them because they've tested everything, they've seen everything, they understand how it's going to happen, and then it goes crazy. Now, the other thing you need to also keep in mind is Iran has bought shoulder mounted rockets that they're able to shoot planes down from the sky. It is not impossible that IRGC starts targeting airplanes.
Imagine that, especially with all of the man pads that we know are inside the country as well. Like I said, you're just a ray of sunshine, Khalid. Got to make a couple quick mentions here before we go into segment number 4. I'll be super fast about it. Check out our primary sponsor, Carnivault, carnivault.com. This is premium American beef, chicken, and pork, 25-year shelf life, reconstitutes in 10 to 15 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes if you put salt in it for raw meat. No mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines. If you sign up for a subscription with Carnivault, I give you a free Survival Dispatch Guardian membership. And I would pull up some stuff from Wasatch Wagyu, but I ate it on air last night. So wasatchwagyu.com. I'll put links in the live chat in just a second. Discount code SD25. Best jerky you've ever had. I guarantee it. It is off the frickin' chain. Nobody else has 25% off but us. SD25, get 25% off. And for those of you who have said that you don't want to be part of our element community where there's 15 to 20,000 messages per week amongst the 20 channels that we have there, I created a new level for y'all. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, click on memberships up top, you can sign up for $4.99 a month instead of $9.99 a month, or $49.99 a year instead of $99 a year. And you get everything but the element community. So you still get the SDN's emergency, SHTF emergency alerts, and you still get the daily intel alerts that I started sending last week to every paying customer. So with that being said, let's jump into segment number 4, which is titled The Southern Border as a Terrorist Logistics Corridor. So the 2011 IRGC plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to Washington used a Mexican cartel contact and $1.5 million payment wired to a cartel operative, proving that the Iran cartel connection is not theoretical. It is a documented, prosecuted operational pipeline that runs directly through the southern border. With cartels now designated as foreign terrorist organizations and fentanyl designated as a weapon of mass destruction under the Trump administration, the legal and military framework to treat the border as a wartime front has finally been established. But the actual closure of the IRGC cartel logistics corridor hasn't followed yet. Iran's intelligence services have systematically shifted to outsourcing attacks to criminal networks, including biker gangs. I hate that word, biker gangs, because most are biker clubs, cartel hitmen, and organized crime groups, specifically because those operatives can enter the United States through the southern border without triggering any terrorist watch list alerts. So, Khalid, let's go back to the $1.5 million. So Iran pays this Mexican cartel $1.5 million to attempt a political assassination on American soil. Why is there been very little coverage? There was very little coverage when that happened initially. There's virtually no coverage of it today whatsoever. But even though we started tracking Hezbollah sleeper cells in America in the early 1990s, Don, my good friend Don Mann, actually I'm wearing one of his shirts right here, Surviving Man with Two Ends. He was the first one who mentioned it to me. Don was a Navy SEAL. He served for 20 years. Then he was a CIA case officer for 23 years. And he announced on Survival Dispatch News back in, ancient times, episodes, let's say 1 to 50 on Survival Dispatch News, that they were tracking 300 Hezbollah sleeper cells in America in the early 1990s. But it seems like every time something of significance happens, we talked about the 300 pounds of ammonium nitrate. We talked about the 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate that just poof disappeared. But we don't talk about the cash and the crimes that is attached to that crash that binds the Iranians and the cartels together. Any speculation on why that is? Are we just sticking our heads in the sand, Clede?
We again, this goes back to an FBI problem. As long as you have an FBI that is, and this was during the Biden administration, this was during the Obama administration, where the FBI became very politicized. When you politicize the FBI, they are not doing what they're supposed to do, which means a lot of things slip under the radar with them. I'll give you another example. The Indian government paid a assassin to go into Canada and carry out an assassination of a Sikh leader who was living in exile from India. That same threat was being planned for the US. That same threat was being planned for the UK as well. The US called the Indian government and said, if you try this on our soil, we will fuck you over. And the threat disappeared. The UK expelled the entire Indian intelligence team from the United Kingdom because of this threat, and they will not let them back in the country. To this day, the London chief of station does not exist because the UK is scared to death of allowing this to happen. If you look at the way Europe has responded to terror attacks and terror threats, they have been more active than the US. They have been able to weed them out. They've been able to stop them. They've been able to find the money and shut it down. Whereas the US has put their head in the sand and said, okay, well, it can't happen here. It won't happen here. So we don't really need to worry about it. That is a massive advantage to the terror groups, because as long as you pretend that nothing can happen, they're doing it as well. They're doing what they want to do, and they're doing it from the point of view of that they have impunity to do it. Now, the other thing that you have to look at is when we look at 9/11 1.0, 9/11 1.0 cost Al Qaeda $500,000. That was what 9/11 1.0 cost Al Qaeda. You are currently giving Al Qaeda $80 million a week through the Taliban. How big of an attack can they carry out on the US? Because you have to understand that Afghanistan has not developed as much as it should based on the amount of money it's receiving. That money is being pumped into terror groups. Those terror groups are planning attacks on the US, and that money is going to come back to the US in the form of blood. No one is thinking about that. And no matter how much the Senate and Tim Burchett has been trying to get this bill passed to stop the funding, it still has not happened. The other thing people need to understand is even if you stop the funding to the Taliban, that means you're only going to stop the humanitarian aid. You're not going to stop the $1 billion that the CIA pays the Taliban. That's $1 billion.
So, not directly related, but I introduced you to one of my friends who is part of a small team prepping to go into Iran and hit strategic sites. I spoke to him today, Khalid, and he said to me, basically, riddle me this. He said there are hundreds and hundreds of buses that are supposedly going into Gaza on a day in, day out basis with supplies. And he said, I'm in the thick of things and I haven't seen one of them. Where's all of that stuff going? I mean, that's our money. You know, we're supposedly providing this aid, and it's resulting in nothing. I don't know if you know where that's going or not, but if you do, by all means, share it.
It's all going to Hamas. It's all going to Hamas because, see, again, the problem that you've got in the U.S. is that you believe it that humanitarian aid is going to be used for humanitarian aid. Right. The money that's being sent to Afghanistan is supposed to feed the poor people of Afghanistan. Instead, it's being used to feed the Al Qaeda camps, the TTP camps, the ISKP camps, the IMU camps, all of the terrorists are eating like kings. And if I've sent you pictures, after we go off the air, I'll send you pictures of what they're eating, and I'll show you what the people of Afghanistan are eating. They're not able to buy food for themselves, while these guys are sitting around eating full chickens, having goats cooked for them, having sheep cooked for them, and that money is all yours. And no one is asking the question, where is the proof that our money is being spent on humanitarian aid?
Well, there's never
All of
accountability.
all of the food that the U.S. has sent to Afghanistan over the past 3 years now, 4 years since the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan.
Fiction
The
and fun.
Taliban is pulling it out of the bag that says U.S. aid, U.S. government, and putting it into a bag that has the Taliban's name on it, saying, "Look, we're giving you food for free." They're taking credit for what you're giving them.
All right, so let's wrap up this segment with this question here. So, given what we know about the cartel Hezbollah nexus, what would a security posture that actually addressed the terror logistics corridor look like, and not just immigration enforcement? Because we've been heavily focused, rightfully so, on immigration enforcement to stop the weaponization of mass migration. But it seems to me, based on your intel and others, especially these ISIS soldiers who were set free in Syria, let's be clear, they did not break out of any jails. They were set free. That they have no problems getting into Canada, Mexico, and then coming into America on fake European passports. I mean, how do we feasibly address that, Khalid? And I'm just going to throw this out there. Shouldn't we be profiling like the Israelis? If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You look like a jihadi terrorist, get the fuck out. Like, it doesn't seem that complicated to me.
It should be. See, you've got one mistake in there. The people that were inside the ISIS prisons in Syria, most of them were Europeans. They already have European passports.
Oh shit!
So when they were released, they went back to their home countries in France and in Germany and in Albania, and they are now flying on their own passports. There's no fake passport with them. I'll even share a website with you that I found, that someone sent to me the other day, where I can buy the passport of any country for $60.
Wow, that's just insane. I mean,
and when you think about it from that point of view, Chris, immigration is not possible. You cannot handle immigration without profiling. And I am not someone who believes in profiling, because you will get a lot of good people caught when you start profiling that aren't terrorists. But unless you start profiling people, I mean, if you remember when we had JJ on the show, JJ said that people were landing in airports that could not even speak English, and they were being allowed to walk out the door, and they just disappeared. No one knew where they went.
This may not be a very politically correct statement, and this might offend some people, and I don't care. I've been saying this for a long time. And I'm not trying to be contradictory to you, Khalid. I don't give a flying fuck if profiling hurts somebody's feelings or catches somebody who's not a terrorist. It's the only fucking way to stop the bleeding. And at the end of the day, if we have this attitude that it looks like a terrorist, and it's probably a terrorist, and somebody gets caught up in that dragnet that's not a terrorist, too fucking bad at this stage of the game, because desperate times call for desperate measures. We are not going to stop this shit until we take a hard stand. Do you know how many subscribers we lost after I had Jake Lang on, Khalid? We lost like thousands of dollars in subscribers to our Guardians program because people said, "What's he doing on your podcast? He doesn't belong on your podcast." Oh yeah? Well, who else is taking up, the argument on behalf of white people? We've gone from 32% to 8% of the world's population. And I don't give a shit how this sounds. We built the most sophisticated civilizations in the history of mankind. And if somebody doesn't get their head out of their ass and stop, saying, oh, well, we have to be politically correct to everybody who's not white, and it's only the white people that need to do this. We're fucked. We're totally fucked at the end of the day.
Yep.
So where I am at 57 years old, I've had enough. I've never been politically correct, but I'm really not politically correct right now. And I don't give a flying fuck who gets caught up in the dragnet, to be quite frank. And I apologize for using the F-bomb so many times, but this shit pisses me off. And you know what? You don't have to like Jake Lang. You don't have to like his methods, but God damn it, if you want to save our country, you better listen to what him and other people are saying, like Tommy Robinson, because we are committing self-inflicted genocide on white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and it's got to stop.
Agreed.
So,
If you remember the first time I was on Survival Dispatch, the first thing I said is we need to stop being politically correct, because that is what's screwing us everywhere we go. Because when you look at Europe, everyone says, well, we need to be inclusive and we need to be politically correct. You've screwed Europe completely. The US did the same thing, that, well, we can't offend anybody. We can't hurt anyone's feelings. When Tom Holman took over the Minnesota protests with ICE, and he said, you know what, we're backing off. I went, why the fuck are you backing off? This is when you push harder, because you have shown them that you're willing to take that extra step. You're willing to go harder at them. That means you will catch the people you need to catch and get that threat out of the United States. The more you show the more you show the asylum seekers, the terrorists, the migrants that don't belong in your country, that you will show mercy to them. You will show them that you are weak, and they will take advantage of that weakness.
Do you know why Tom Homan and the administration made that decision? It's one word. It's called midterms. They did it for political purposes, and I completely disagree with that. I mean, I hate the political aspect of things. I hate the politically correct aspect of things. And if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same damn results. And that's what pisses me off about this. So let's get us into segment number 5 here. So the 9/11 2.0 scenario, coordinated multi-city attack plan, and what patriots must do. And I don't use the word patriots very often because it's very cliche, but I chose to leave it in tonight's brief. So Western intelligence agencies are currently monitoring what they described as heightened chatter indicating coordinated attack planning by Iranian proxy networks, not necessarily against military targets overseas, even though those are not excluded, but against soft civilian targets inside the United States and Europe, triggered by any major U.S. military action against Iran. The IRGC's operational doctrine for a homeland strike for simultaneous distributed attacks across multiple American cities is designed specifically to exceed law enforcement surge capacity and produce maximum psychological disruption, which is why preparedness at the individual, family, and community level is no longer optional. It's the only realistic first response layer that will exist. Every American Christian who's been paying attention knows this moment was coming. The question is not whether we prepare, but whether we prepare in time. And the window to do that without the pressure of an active threat environment is right now. So with that being said, Khalid, let's get into some of the final questions of the night. So not just yourself, but other intelligence officials have been openly warning of coordinated multi-city attack planning. We've looked at it from the perspective of, okay, they have command and control like Mumbai 2008, or we inflict so much damage they don't have command and control. But it essentially goes from a whole bunch of coordinated attacks where the jihadis pivot to, okay, well, we'll just go hit the big targets like the Golden Gate Bridge. Neither scenario is palatable. What does the public have a right to know about the specific threat vectors being monitored? And why is that information being withheld? Or even worse, why is your guy, what do you call him, youth size windbreaker? Why is he telling the fusion centers there's nothing to worry about? These are not the droids you're looking for. There's nothing to worry about.
Well, this is a hard one for me because at Command 11, we have a policy of democratizing intelligence. The more we tell you, the more you know, the more informed you are, so you could make better decisions for yourself. yes, we analyze and we interpret the intelligence we give you, but we give you the intelligence so you know what's going on. That way, even if you think I'm wrong in how I'm interpreting what I'm telling you, at least you know what I'm basing it on. When you look at how the CIA operates, when you look at how MI6 operates, when you look at how the FBI operates, everything is kept behind a veil. We can't tell the American people this is going on. We can't tell people this is what's happening. Youth size windbreaker is the worst person I have ever seen as director of FBI, because his own ego is so high that he cannot accept the fact that someone else caught something that he didn't think of. And that's where the problem starts. Because if you and I'll put it really simply, youth size windbreaker is saying this is clickbait, but his girlfriend is out giving interviews saying that the US is about to be attacked. There's a huge terror threat to the United States. How is it possible that the director of the FBI is saying it's clickbait and your girlfriend is saying the America is about to be attacked? There is a break in there someplace. Someone is not looking at reality going, something is about to happen. And when you look at it from that point of view, you start going, wait a minute, if they're not telling me something, why are they not telling me? Is it because they don't want us to know? Is it because they don't believe it? Is it because they're not ready for it? And if they're not ready for it, what's going to happen when it hits? And that's the fear right now, because the administration, and I can give you this from a 100% accurate point of view, the administration has been briefed completely on this on the 9/11 2.0 attack. Completely. They have been told that chemical and biological weapons could be used during the 9/11 2.0 attack. They have chosen not to take any action at all. If that's political, you have screwed yourself for decades to come. Because an attack of this level will collapse America. It will cause a civil war like we have never seen in any country in the world. Because look, America is the most civilized society in the world. But when you are attacked, you forget what it means to be civilized, and you start defending yourself. You start defending your family, you start defending your community. That means you go to war. You cannot accept the possibility that someone else caught something that you didn't see or you didn't interpret. That is a failure from an intelligence point of view. That is a failure from an enforcement point of view. Tulsi is saying the same thing. Joe Kent is saying the same thing, and everyone else is going, nothing's going to happen. Why would Joe Kent sit in front of the Senate and say there are 18,000 known terrorists inside the United States right now if he didn't believe it?
Well, I mean, that's a good rhetorical question. I think that we have divisions inside the administration and federal law enforcement. And I think the answer to your question as you were asking them, is it because, they're not prepared and other things? I would argue that it's all of the above, and it varies based on the agencies, and that it's easier for the FBI when the shit goes down to use their tired old line, well, it was on our radar, but we didn't have enough information to make the call. And they'll sweep it under the rug in that type of manner.
Chris, here's where the problem is. When you have people like me, like Sarah Adams, and numerous other people talking about this threat, even General Flynn has been openly saying this on X, that the U.S. is about to get hit with a terror attack. The potential of you being able to say, oh, well, we didn't know, has disappeared. Everyone's going to point the finger at your government and say, dude, you knew and you dropped the ball.
Yeah, that's pretty much a given, isn't it? So let's pivot into the next question. So if the IRGC's doctrine is to overwhelm American first responder capacity, kill as many as they can. So in other words, they hit a soft target, they draw the first responders in, then there's a secondary and tertiary attack targeted at the first responders to kill as many of them as possible. If they're successful in doing that, what does community level resilience look like And who's building that right now outside of the outliers like Orange County, Florida here that Father Duck mentioned? Is anybody else doing anything, Khalid?
Well, I can tell you, I've been contacted by a lot of people that want help in understanding how to build a militia, because I've built a militia from the ground up. They want help in understanding how to be able to defend their communities. But when you look at the 350 million people that live in the U.S., I've been contacted by maybe 0.001% of that population, asking for help on how to do something. Uh, at one point, we were contacted by a federal agency. I'm not going to name the agency, but Chris, you know who contacted us. They sent us one email, and after that one email, we never heard from them again. And that's the level of thought process that's going on inside the federal government. Your communities have to work from a central point of unity, and that is your church. When you start using your church as your base command, you will be able to build your communities, you'll be able to defend your communities, and you'll be able to work together to provide the resources you need to provide to every single person around you. When you start working as an individual, and the problem right now is that everyone was working from an individual point of view because too many people don't believe this can happen. If one church pastor were to stand up on a Sunday and say, we are about to get hit with a spiritual warfare attack inside the United States, mentality would change. Because when a pastor says it, the entire church hears it and their brain clicks. This is not just physical warfare. This is something the American people need to understand. This is not just physical warfare. This is psychological warfare. This is spiritual warfare at its purest sense. This is a group of people coming to conquer what you believe in. That is where your church has to step forward. When your church becomes the center point, it becomes the point of unity, your base camp, that will give you the ability to start protecting how your communities will operate together. It is not about one, it is about all. But one community has to stand together in every place. And the best place to start that from is your church, because as long as you believe in God, as long as you put God first, you will win, because God will always win. God is always right. But as long as you start saying, well, I have weapons, I have food, I have this, there is no I. It's always people around you need to take care of. And that starts from the church and it starts from the Bible.
Well, let's look at this from a practical standpoint, Clede, as far as the people who are completely unprepared for any calamity, let alone a calamity the size of 9/11 2.0. And I think we probably need to capture the difference between 9/11 2.0 with and without command and control. We need to put some thought towards that and put a moniker on it, because the more and more I think about it, especially based on your comments, okay, so command and control gets knocked out. Doesn't look like Mumbai 2008, but it does look like a whole bunch of 9/11 1.0s hitting major infrastructure. Let's just talk about the people who are completely unaware of anything like this, completely unprepared, and what everybody should have as a minimum level for preps. I would argue, coming as the CEO of a survival and prepping company, you got to have a minimum of 30 days food and water first and foremost. 90 plus days would be better. I know times are tough for some people. Shop like a mother. My wife does it. She's a coupon person. We only buy whole foods, which is more expensive than processed garbage. But allocate whatever you can towards your preps. Food and water, number one. Number two, make sure that you have some way of protecting yourself, whether that be, pew-pews or something else. And I have to be careful because we keep getting friggin' strikes, man. Our second YouTube channel got a strike because last year I mentioned a discount code for Pilgrim ammunition. The hits keep coming from CommieTube. But anyway, I would argue that you need to have some way to protect yourself. And above all else, because as Clede mentioned, there's strength in numbers. You have to have a community, a group. People are, if they're going to fall short on anything that's preparedness related, it's comms. And that's something I spend a ton of time on. Khalid, people will go buy radios. They'll buy some Baofeng radio for whatever, 30, 40, 50 bucks off of Amazon. They turn it on, they listen to it for a minute. They put it in a drawer and they think, okay, well, if SHTF happens, I've got my radio, without realizing that the label that says it's good for 25, 35 miles is complete and utter bullshit. You're not getting 25, 30 miles unless you live in the salt flats or you have access to a large, robust repeater system. And repeater systems are not SHTF comms. If you don't own the repeaters, you don't control the repeaters, you don't keep the repeaters up and running all the time, do not rely on anybody else's infrastructure. You're lucky, depending on your antennas, depending on how dense an urban center you're in, what your elevation is. You're not going to penetrate any solid objects like trees and buildings with VHF, UHF ham radios. Not going to happen. You have to go to shortwave VHF to bounce off the ionosphere. So I don't want to bore people too much, but generally speaking, in most suburban areas, if you're lucky, you might get 1.5 miles, 2 miles. I've got some 25 watt handsets, HTs, that I can get about 5 miles with a really good antenna on them. But at the end of the day, comms is heavily overlooked, and you got to have alternate ways to get in touch with your tribe, or you have to have rendezvous points with your tribe, or as Khalid said, you're an island, you're all alone, and you're on your own. Khalid, anything else you'd add as far as people stacking up preps yesterday? Not today, yesterday.
Well, I'm one of those people that believes you need to have at least 90 days of food. That is one of the biggest things you're gonna. When calamity hits, when shit hits the fan, the first thing you're gonna worry about is food, because you cannot fight on an empty stomach. So food is the first thing you need to make sure you have. Second, water. If you don't have water, it's game over. Third, I agree with you that you need pew pews, a way to defend your home. That's very important. Start thinking of ways to put booby traps, different.
Let me pause on
protection.
that just for a second. We are not attorneys. We are not giving you any legal advice. We are not counseling you to break federal laws as it pertains to booby traps, and they are very, very extensive. Let me just clarify what Khalid is coming from is from a complete breakdown in society, like a what we call a Teotihuacan situation, the end of the world as we know it. At that point in time, anything goes. But right now, if you put booby traps on your property and somebody gets hurt, even if they're in the process of committing a crime, you're probably getting charged federally for that. And there's lots of people who have been charged. This is not hyperbole. So go ahead, Khalid. I just want to make sure that we cover the bases on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, again, booby traps are things that you put into place when the world starts to collapse. But you've got to plan for them beforehand. It's not something you can do on the run. If you've got them in place, I've got them in my garage, they're ready to go. If shit hits the fan, it's just moving them into certain locations, and it allows me to protect my home. That is something you can do right now. Third, you need to plan. And this is the problem most people are having, is because you're not planning, you're already failing. And when you don't plan, you will fail. And a lot of people are listening. See, this is the thing I've noticed, Chris. A lot of people listen to what we say, but they don't act on what we say. And the most important thing that you can do is act on what we're telling you, because we're not telling you something that isn't going to happen. We're telling you something that is going to happen. And the example I give you is look across the border at Mexico right now. They are miles away from your border, miles away. The US, and I have seen this today, all over X, people are talking about the links between IRGC and the cartels all of the sudden today. They have not been talking about it in the past. All of a sudden today, they're talking about it. Today, I saw a former FBI agent who is very well respected, has been on numerous programs, never talking about the potential of a terror attack. Today saying Miami and Houston could be hit with a terror attack. Today, he's saying it. We've been saying it for 6 months on Survival Dispatch. The group that I'm involved with has been saying it for well over 2 years. Now, all of a sudden, people are going, holy shit, something's going to happen. Now, trying to fix it, trying to build up the resources you need, either you need a huge store of cash to go and buy everything you need, or you've done the planning beforehand and you've built up your stock. This is not something you can do when it happens. When a storm is about to hit in the US, we just had blizzards that hit the Northeast in the US. Ask people what what grocery stores look like. Was there anything on the shelves? These are things that you have to plan for in advance because you have to build up your resources for them. You cannot wait until it happens and then try and do it.
Here's a little bit of perspective, Khalid. I always say to people, look what happens on Black Friday where people beat the heck out of each other over a TV. What do you think they're going to do when there's no food on the shelf? And we can go down that rabbit hole slightly because we haven't done it recently. All of our grocery stores operate off what are called 3, 4, or 5 PL systems. It stands for third-party logistics, fourth-party logistics, fifth-party logistics. So the way it works is that a stock level for an item drops to a preset threshold, which triggers a purchase order to the distribution center, a bill of lading to the logistics carrier, and everything all happens automatically in the background. And at any particular point in time, with very few exceptions, grocery stores in America typically have 3 days of food on the shelf. As y'all probably know, it's called JIT, just in time. This is the world I come from. High tech, by the way, is building these types of systems. There is no paper and pen backup to that system. So when all hell breaks loose, whether it be terrorist attacks, cyber attacks, both of the above, whatever the case may be, here's the way this goes down. People storm the groceries and they pick the shelves clean, just like Khalid mentioned. You know, I asked Ted Yoho, who was a large animal vet for 29 years, why cows stopped making milk during hurricanes, because you can't buy a drop of milk, you know, before a hurricane in Florida to save your life. It all gets stripped. It's a joke, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that when people panic and they swarm the grocery stores, and then they don't want to send their kids to school because it's too dangerous, rightfully so. They're afraid to go to work themselves. I mean, we already have people that are kind of weaker, the weak amongst us, Khalid, that post stuff on X all the time about in tears. I have to go to work and I'm so worried about going to work, you know, like it's a mental illness epidemic. But at the end of the day, when people don't go to their jobs, the supply chains, the people who power the 3, 4, 5 PL systems, they're not there. So if you don't have semi drivers delivering food, you don't have distribution center workers splitting pallets and putting them onto trucks, you know, last leg trucks for delivery. You don't have people going to work at the grocery stores. The whole supply chain breaks down really, really quickly. Mike Sterling and I, 3 years ago, we did a scenario where somebody, let's say from the Southeast United States, was in the Pacific Northwest when the shit hit the fan, and it's a Teotihuacan situation. And what would you do? So we did it from the perspective of my wife and I were at her sister's place, just north of Olympia, Washington. And I was looking at the map and I said to Greg, her husband, I said, oh, it looks like y'all have a large industrial area not too far from here. And he said, yeah, why do you say that? And I said, well, I see a bunch of distribution centers for, you know, Amazon, Target, etc. I said, I'm doing this piece on, you know, what would you do if you're traveling and, you know, you don't have all of your preps with you. And the way I put it together, Khalid, was you're going to have people go to all the grocery stores. They're going to go to all the Walgreens, CVS, you name it. They're going to pick the shelves clean. I'm going to the Amazon warehouse distribution center. Number one, they have virtually no security, believe it or not. I'm telling you, virtually zero security. You can walk into these distribution centers and nobody will even bat an eye, especially if you're wearing anything that looks remotely like the other people working there. And there's not as many people in them as you would think. So I'm going to the Amazon distribution center, the Target distribution center, and I'm going to load up on my preps there. But point being, and Mike came up with some great ideas too, by the way. Office buildings, people will have an area where they've stored coffee and food, etc. But the food thing is critical. If you don't have food stacked up and this happens, you're probably going to be in the fight of your life to put food on the table, period. That's all there is to it. So for us in the Southeast here with hurricanes, Khalid, a lot of people have generators and stuff, but a lot of people don't have generators. It's why, I'm going to be quite honest, shameless plug, it's why I love working with the guys at Carnival. That's a 25-year shelf life. Power goes out, you can't power your fridge and your freezer. It doesn't matter. This stuff's got 25-year shelf life. So there's very few solutions like that out there, by the way, because most of the freeze-dried meat is like shoe leather, because they cook it, they saturate it in sodium. You get these little tiny pieces of meat that'll break your dang jaw. This is raw meat. These are the only guys who cracked the code on raw meat freeze-drying for 25 years, because even the tiniest bit of fat will turn to jelly when you freeze-dry it, wreck everything in the bag, like in the blink of an eye. And trust me, we know, because we have 2 freeze dryers and we've gone down that road before. But I think we kind of beat it to death tonight as far as things that people should have for their backups. Clete, I want to show everybody the Hotel Mumbai page here, because we mention it frequently. If you haven't seen Hotel Mumbai, watch it. It's on all kinds of different things like Amazon Fire, etc. It's probably the best rendering of what a CCTA actually looks like based on an actual CCTA that happened. Your thoughts on that, Clete? I mean, are you aware of anything that's been, put out for a movie that's more accurate?
No, not at all. I mean, I just did an article for you on Dead Drop, where I took apart the intelligence that was running behind behind the Mumbai attack, how they carried it out, how they were communicating, how they were able to target so easily. Hotel Mumbai gives you a very clear picture, and if you want to see it in real life, look at what's going on in Mexico. And just to add one point, Chris, we have all of these illegals that are driving semi trucks in the U.S., and I've beaten this point over and over that they're not in the U.S. just to drive those semis. They are there for something else. When shit hits the fan, you're going to see rolling bombs. The amount of explosives you can carry inside of a semi truck will take out a city block easily.
So we had Danielle on. I'm forgetting her last name. Begins with a C. It'll come in a minute. Look up maybe Danielle on X or Substack. She works in the trucking industry. She has some incredible information on these topics, Khalid. And I don't think anybody other than yourself and her have been banging the drums and saying our trucking industry has been weaponized against us, and y'all don't even realize how much it's been weaponized against us. And it's more cheerful good news from my friend Khalid, aka 00711. So anyway, with that being said, check out Hotel Mumbai. Seriously, if you haven't seen it before, pay attention to it. I've probably watched it 10 times, Khalid, because I find like I'm always working. I've got shit playing over there, and each time that I put it on, I pick up a little bit more here and there, and then I go do some research on it. It leads me to command11.com like everything else does. But with that being said, I got to give a shout out here to our friends at Carnival again. If you sign up for a subscription, so check that out. You get 2 family packs of beef, 1 family pack of chicken, 1 of pork, $159 a month. And if you look right here in the corner, you'll see the Survival Dispatch Guardians logo. You get a free pass to the Survival Dispatch Guardians. And I'll give you all just a piece of intel on that. I have less than zero interest in policing people who sign up for something like this and then stop the subscription and then kicking them out of our community. I don't do that. In my mind, Khalid, means they need the $10 a month more than we do probably. But and I don't care if that sounds like I'm shooting myself in the foot. My mission is pretty simple. My job is to dispatch information to my fellow Americans and friends of America, so you all stand a better chance of surviving in these very dangerous times. Everything else is a byproduct of that. So I also need to mention our friends at wasatchwagyu.com. Khalid, look at these packages here. So they've got jerky bundles, $49, $55, $99, and you get more than what's shown in those pictures, by the way. Discount code SD25 gets you 25% off. Nobody else has got it. It's a hell of a deal. It's got an 18-month life, so you can throw it in your bag, maybe eat it a year later, like your go bag, your get home bag. And every year you take it out, you eat it, you put some fresh stuff in. But awesome source of beef protein and good fats to go with it. You can't beat it with a stick, I'm telling you. Khalid, is there anything else you want to add to tonight's conversation before we put a lid on this thing?
The only thing I'm going to add is keep a close eye on Mexico. What you're seeing happening in Mexico right now is about to cross the border. It's going to hit the U.S. What you're seeing right now in Mexico is exactly what's going to happen inside the United States. And take that for much more than a grain of salt, because you're seeing Hotel Mumbai literally happening across the border. For the last decade, you've seen all these things happening in the Middle East very far away from you, and it wasn't affecting you at all. It's now literally on your border and ready to cross over. And once it crosses over, if you're not ready for it, you're done. It's game over. You're not going to have anything to do. Second, shameless plug. Get into our element channels, because there's so much information being passed in those element groups. Chris and I are active in there. We're answering questions. We're sharing intelligence that we cannot share on air. It's worth the investment. It's worth being there, because what you learn inside there, you will not get from mainstream media. We cannot talk about it during the broadcast, because it will get us in trouble if we say it on the air.
Yeah, we lose our platforms.
We lose the platform. Yeah. So I mean, if you're hesitant on buying a subscription for Survival Dispatch, think of it from this point of view. If you want to stay alive, if you want to be prepared, you need this subscription, and you need to be in the element channels, because there's a lot of conversation there where you will know what's happening on the other side of the United States, and you'll know it before the mainstream media does. The other night when Pakistan was bombing Afghanistan, before it was breaking on the media, I was on the Element channel breaking it on there and explaining it and talking about it and going through detail on why it was happening, how it was happening, and what the extent of the attack was, and what the effect on the terror groups was going to be because of those attacks. You're not going to get that on the mainstream media. So I say it because it's an advantage for everyone, but yes, it's an investment, but it's a worthwhile investment.
So just a funny note, Clete, a little bit before we met, my buddy Jeff O'Donnell took 2 years. He built this web interface to Edison, which is where all federal voting precincts report in. And John Wheat and myself and a bunch of others like Mike Sterling, we did a 12-hour broadcast on November the 5th. And we had access to all of the data in real time from Edison. We had about 50,000 people watching us across 9 different platforms. And people were like, who the fuck is Survival Dispatch? And how are they calling these races an hour before the mainstream media? So as we get into the midterms, we will once again be way ahead of the crowd, thanks to my good friend Jeff O'Donnell. And he's the guy who, by the way, did the forensics on the hard drives for the Tina Peters case that the piece of shit judge who was elected by those same machines refused to be brought into evidence, even though it was pretty cut and dry. Practical payoff. Let's wrap up on that, Clete. So one skill, one item, one mindset shift. I'll give you mine right now. So practical payoff is the things we recommend that you do in light of the main topic tonight. Learn your local critical infrastructure. That's a skill. Power substations, water treatment plants, fuel terminals, as well as gas stations closest to you. Build a personal contingency plan for what life looks like if any of those go offline for 72 plus hours. And as far as an item, get the 30-day food and water supply in place. And I'm going to cheat. Add a hand crank radio. I like the Midlands in particular. If you can't afford the Midlands, there's some other ones that are a third of the price. They're not the same level of quality, but they're still decent. You'll get NOAA weather bands, emergency broadcast alerts. You can crank it by hand to power it up. And you got to have some eyes and ears out there. And for a mindset shift, stop treating this as a distant geopolitical problem. Start treating it as a neighborhood security problem. Anybody who thinks that we let tens, if not hundreds of thousands of shitbags into our country from third world shitholes who hate our guts, and that there's going to be no repercussions, man, I'll tell you what, I got some waterfront property to sell you in Arizona. Khalid, one skill that people need to learn ASAP.
Learn how to fend for yourself. Whether that means hunting, whether that means being able to defend your home, whether it means fixing electrical problems around the house, plumbing problems around the house. Learn a skill that you can use to keep things running around you, number one. Number two, start to understand what your law enforcement and what your emergency response people's uniforms look like. Because we've said this over and over, these terrorists are going to look like law enforcement. They are going to look like EMS personnel. If you don't know what they look like, what those uniforms are supposed to look like, you're going to end up in an October 7th situation. So learn what the uniforms look like, learn what the vehicles look like, so that you understand what is real and what is not real. In terms of a mindset shift, I agree with you, Chris, that we need to stop being complacent. The complacency has to disappear now. We have said this over and over and over and over. As long as you believe it's not going to happen, you're not going to do anything to get ready. Start looking at it from the point of view that it's already started, because it has already started. Start moving from that point of view that now you need to get active. You need to do something to build up your resources, your supply, so that when it all happens and everything disappears, you have what you need. Don't think that there's going to be a supply chain. It's completely possible. I saw it in the comments that when this blew up in Mexico, the first thing they did was they blew up the gas stations, they blew up the grocery stores so that they cut off supply.
And the banks.
Yep. I mean, you have to understand, these terrorists are thinking well ahead of what you're thinking. So get yourself into that mindset of, I need to have everything I need to survive for the next 90 days, for the next 30 days. Because if you don't do it, you're going to find yourself stuck out, and Black Friday is going to look like a Christmas party compared to what it'll really be.
Yeah, true stories. So we're going to be back tomorrow night at the usual time. Jeff and Randy and a friend of mine, Don Vandergriff. You can look him up. He was a Marine for 25, 26 years. He's written 16 books. He's plugged in with the same stuff that Khalid and I cover. It'll be a great conversation, because tomorrow night the topic is Psy-War Nation. So psychological warfare is a weapon. And we're going to cover a lot of ground. I mean, modern Americans today, we're being targeted like nonstop narrative warfare. And it's specifically designed to produce confusion, fear, anger, hopelessness. So when psyops are the main battlefield, you can break people's will mentally and physically before you even fire the first shot. So make sure you join us tomorrow night. I have a bunch of top tier guests coming on. I went back to sending out the casting email every Saturday. I used to do it on Sundays, and the response has been phenomenal from some very high caliber people that you'll see join us. For example, a week from tonight, Khalid, I've got a guy joining us who is a Christian whose family was all slaughtered in Nigeria, and he managed to escape and lives in Oklahoma now. It's going to be a very interesting conversation as far as his message, which is it's time for all Christians to up their game from a courage standpoint. I had a video from Dilly Meme Team lined up to close tonight, and I swapped it out. I'll play it tomorrow night, because if you're a Texan, a fellow Texan, I would implore you, when you go to the polls next Tuesday for the primary in Texas, take somebody who doesn't normally vote with you and get them on board to vote for Doc Pete. We have a real chance here to unseat a piece of crap WEF pawn, Greg Abbott, who Trump is backing, which is stupid, but whatever. Doc Pete stands a good chance of winning this. And if he wins it, he'll save Texas. And if we save Texas, we save the whole dang country. So I've got a 6-minute video of Doc Pete speaking that'll give you an idea of why his men to this day would follow him to hell and back. And I've got over 23,000 people in my contacts now that I've worked with during my 40-year career. And there's nobody I'm more proud of to call a friend than Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers from Texas. So y'all have a chance in Texas to set the ship right. But anyways, between now and tomorrow night, I'd appreciate if all y'all would please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless our law enforcement. God bless our military. God bless America. Vote for Doc Pete. Spread the word. Vote for Doc Pete. Enjoy.
I have the luxury of taking in the different speakers and hearing the different, confirmations, if you will. So I'm going to share something real quick. It's going to be a Pete Chambers thing. That's my name, by the way. And when I left the military, and I had met Jesus when I was 30 years old. I'm 60 right now. But I knew who Jesus was. But I met Jesus when I was 30. And it took a long time to develop the relationship with Jesus, because I kept running the other way. I kept running towards the sound of the bullets, thinking that this is where I needed to be. Kept volunteering for every mission that came along. We crossed over at the same time at 3rd Group. I was at 2nd Battalion, you were over at the Eagles. My good buddies over there, PK Keel, captain over there. I lost him. We went to the Q course together. Good friend. 20 other soldiers. And I'm going to tell this story real quick, and this is sua sponte. So any Rangers out there understand what this means. This is on the spot. This just wasn't planned for this evening, but sometime the Holy Spirit might show up. So the 12th of May, 2004, great coordinate in the Mike Bravo sector of Baghdad, somebody decided to blow up my truck, and somehow I survived it, and a guy next to me didn't. He was a great soldier, Jeff Shaver, a man of God, 20-something-year-old kid, and I'm a little bit older. Every time we would be out in the convoy and out to get into a contact with the enemy, he would be whispering something. And he'd keep whispering this thing, and I'm giving all the glory to God on this one. I said, "What are you whispering, son? You're always whispering something." He said, "Oh, something Mama taught me." "Okay, what is it?" "Well, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything in prayer and petition, present your request to God, and the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus." He would fight through battles saying that. He was as calm as a cucumber. And I'm an ER trained trauma guy who's been through a lot. But my first contact in Iraq, in the early part of Iraq, I got to see a lot of things happening right in front of me I was not trained for in emergency rooms back home. And this kid taught me how to remain calm in combat using scripture and living it. And on the 12th of May, 2004, at about 10 o'clock in the morning, he died right next to me, protecting me. A year later, I went to visit his mom. Single mom, only child. And I said, "Ma'am, I was his commander, and I'm responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen. And if she wanted to hate me, she could hate me. And if she wanted to slap me, she could slap me. I was just a captain then. But I knew the principles of leadership. I was responsible for everything that happened or didn't, because I learned that as an enlisted guy looking at North Korea for a year when my officers took care of me." And she said, one thing, one request: live your life like his life, this guy here, like his life mattered, her son. Now, for the audience, for all of us as brothers and sisters in Christ, we should live our lives like his life mattered, right? And that was a lesson that I learned. And so my relationship really began that day, because I saw Jesus. And he said, you got another chance today. Your truck's blown to pieces. I don't know how you got out of this. But like John Wayne, I came walking out of the smoke, because that's what somebody told me. We figured everybody's dead in that truck, sir, till you came walking out of that smoke. I don't know. I don't know how. I do know how, because you've got another mission, son. We all do. So this is what I want you to do. And I think we talked about this, because we talked a lot on the phone. We've had conversations. And I'm going to challenge you with this, and everyone in this room that has not done this, is it to see yourself as God sees you, nothing more, nothing less. This stuff here, none of this stuff, I'm a former whatever, it doesn't matter. What are you now, and how does God see you? Right? Because sometimes, you know, when you first time you put it on, let's be a little honest, any of you out there, it's kind of cool, right? And I was a young enlisted guy, and I look at these Green Berets walking by, and I think, oh man. And then you get there, and you're like, I'm still a grunt. I just got more money and guns, right? But see yourself as God sees you, nothing more, nothing less. I've always been a soldier, a centurion, a healer of those wounded in battle. I was a doctor. It was my job to bring them home. My spirit is attuned to the commander's voice. I wrote this, and this is what I feel about the triune being that we are, the spiritual side, the soul, and the flesh. My soul has stepped on the terra of 1,000 battlefields and feels the cumulative knowledge of it all. My flesh has bled on foreign soil, and my senses have embraced the sounds and smells and pains of war. And I'm at home in the dirt. We are at home in the dirt, but there's more dirt to dig. We are Jedburghs behind enemy lines. You know what that is. That was the original guys that went in behind enemy lines and before D-Day and set the conditions for the invasion. We are setting the conditions for, ladies and gentlemen, the kingdom of God. That's what we're setting the conditions for, as he would grace us, as he did with his blood, and now his commandment to go out and to make disciples of all, right? And sometimes it's not in easy places. We are behind enemy lines. We are anticipating going home to the Father. So I had to say that now, falling on the heels of you, Bishop, because it's tied together with Ezekiel and then going to you and then me just back in the pulpit here. Look, we're on a mission, all of us.